Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mean Green Gridiron podcast. I am joined, and I'm Billy Sierra. Keep forgetting to say my name. I'm joined once again by the man whose search firm brought you the new head coach in town, Carter. Carter, congrats, man. How's it going?
It's been really hard to keep this behind closed doors the last couple of days. I had the news before anybody who um, may have like a Patreon or something like
Right.
that really has the sources. No, this I've known for weeks. Um, nah, this is a fun day. As fun as the wins have been. There's been some stress kind of floating in the air a little bit, so it's fun to
Right.
have a day to just sit back and smile a little bit. Things are okay. So.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, we are referring to Neal Brown, the 21st head football coach in University of North Texas and its predecessor names history. Um, So yeah, with that, Neal Brown comes in. He coached West Virginia from 2019 to 2024, where he had I think it was 2 games over 500 there. Prior to that, he had a 4-year stint as the head coach at Troy. The years 2 through 4 there was into the double digit win marks, including as many North Texas fans may painfully remember the 2017 New Orleans Bowl, where they really put a beating on Mason Fine and really put up a ton of points against our defense. So luckily for us, the guy who orchestrated that is going to be on our sidelines going forward. So that's a nice change of pace. But yeah, regardless, this was definitely the top name that was being mentioned in the coaching search from rip. I mean, he was the guy that was getting leaked first before anybody else, as being confirmed. There were a few other names sprinkled around there, but he was definitely kind of the preeminent name in terms of both one, the resume, and then two, just he was the prominent hire as far as who it looked like North Texas was going to get, just in who they wanted. And it seems like that was the case. And, we kind of ballyhooed Morris's decision to take the coaching job at Oklahoma State with,
Mhm.
before our last game was even played, regular season game was even played. And now it's starting to look like it paid off a little bit to kind of get that coaching search officially kicked off. Brown had already interviewed with us prior to the South Florida, Tulane, and Memphis jobs all opening up on Sunday. So that seemed like that was probably helpful in our favor, that we were that far along with Brown and with the coaching search already at that point. But Carter, what are your initial thoughts on Neal Brown and how this search kind of concluded?
Um, it's been an entertaining couple of days. You could even throw all the Lane Kiffin stuff out the window, and it's still been just a whirlwind of all sorts of coaching fun and amusement. Um, just to base grade the hire, I would probably give it like a B plus. I think it's about as good as you could have hoped for with the coaches that were available right now and where we're at as a program. I think Neal Brown did an excellent job at Troy. Um, I think the West Virginia stints is going to be a little bit of the outlier here. I've seen a lot of West Virginia fans kind of happy that he's getting another shot, which is a testament to the kind of culture coach that he is. Um, I've known Neal Brown's name for a while, and his kind of staple of coaching is that he's a player's coach, and what he did at Troy and West Virginia both were established kind of culture and good healthy locker rooms, which is important to have. So obviously wins are a separate thing, but he left West Virginia with a winning record. I think people forget that. There's a lot of, I think, intangibles and things about West Virginia as a program now where I don't think it's that easy to win up there. And I'm not trying to make excuses for Neal Brown not going 70-12 at West Virginia, but I don't think that was a perfect job for him at the time. I don't think West Virginia is like a great gig at the moment. They really have not surged in the Big 12 since joining, and Dana Holgerson kind of fizzled out there, and Now they're going back to Rich Rod just to try to reclaim the old Big East magic. So I don't know how much of him not really succeeding at West Virginia was on him as much as it is, they're surrounded by ACC schools and, Louisville's close and the Virginia schools are close and Pitt's close. I don't think it's a great opportunity for anybody unless you're, Nick Saban or somebody. So, I'm not going to grade his hiring here off his West Virginia tenure just because of that. I do think that he has a solid enough resume. He put together a pretty successful offense in 2023 with Chad Scott, who is with him at Texas now. So that's an interesting name to keep an eye on, I guess, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know who we could have hired that would be like that much more of a home run. I think kind of my opinion of it the last couple of days has been like when I first heard he was kind of emerging as the guy, I was like, oh, okay. And the more I thought about him and kind of went through his tape and his records, I was like, oh, okay, I could be talked into this. There's no reason to believe he's going to bottom out here. He did a really good job at Troy. He even won a couple of bowl games at West Virginia. Again, like I said, he left West Virginia with a winning record. So I think it's about as good B+, nice job hire as you can get, and should be a successful tenure here. No reason to think that, but I think we're going to kind of gauge how much of a successful G5 coach he is by his tenure here. Because if he has a really, really good tenure and gets us a couple 10-win seasons and some bowl wins, it's like, okay, this guy has his sweet spot. And maybe that's good for us. Maybe that makes him believe that, he can stick around here for a while and establish something. I think that he has, I don't know the guy, but I would assume he has some sort of edge to, prove himself after West Virginia. So I hope that's working in his favor. But yeah, overall, I mean, everything I've heard about him seems good. And the last thing I'll point out is that I mentioned it in our group chat, but the amount of people who are West Virginia people who are like, oh, this guy sucks, have fun with him, are all like the Joe bunch of numbers accounts on Twitter, like all the bots with no profile pictures. So that leads me to believe that I think he left most West Virginia fans. I know it's a really weird place with a lot of weird people, but most of the normal seeming Mountaineer fans seem to be on his side and want him to succeed here. So, yeah, I'm content with it. I think it's a good hire.
Yeah, and what Carter's saying is the West Virginia fans with a full set of teeth liked him. And
I did not say that.
No, I'm just kidding. That was a low blow. But yeah, I think last hire when we went with Morris, a name that we were hearing was Justin Fuente, and he had just been fired from Virginia Tech, so it was a kind of similar situation. And Carter talked about that edge for Brown, and I think that's pretty notable and pretty important to factor in here because Justin Fuente, we kind of heard that maybe he didn't have that fire edge that he previously had when he was at Memphis and early Virginia Tech. And since Fuente was fired in 2021, he's basically worked 1 year as a analyst at Indiana in 2023, but he hasn't in nothing since then. So, Justin now I think he's like a radio commentator, or he's, has some kind of media talking head kind of job. So, all that to say, Neal Brown does not seem burned out on coaching, and for him to take this job means that, like Carter said, he's got an edge, he's hungry, and he wants it. There was some media member, I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was a West Virginia guy that basically said something along the lines of, with Neal Brown's name getting mentioned in some of the G5 openings, they kind of want to make it clear that Neal Brown is not the guy who's just going to take a G5 job just because it's offered him, that he's going to be methodical and make the right decision and not just, take the first one that pops up. He's not someone who's desperate, not someone who's, forced to take any job he can get. He was going to pick the right one. And so that's where I like that it seems like a very a lot of mutual interest here, and I think the coaches who have done well here have been coaches who there's been a lot of mutual interest.
Sure.
Seth Petrell, obviously, early in his tenure had a lot of success. I know he was very adamant that he wanted the job, and he kind of did the classic, looked Rick Villarreal in the eyes and told him, "I want this job," or something to that effect. And then, Morris similar. Morris was a guy who wanted this job, wanted to be here. Passed or left his P4 coordinator job, P5 coordinator job at the time, and all that to say, I think Neal Brown wants to be here. It seems like it's a mutual fit, and it seems like he was our top candidate, and they moved fairly quickly on getting this done, and we're able to seal the deal, a week after Morris announced that he was leaving. So,
Yeah.
again, all good signs. You said B plus. I'm there too. I think it's hard to envision an A plus coaching hire at North
Right.
Texas, just given the resources we have. Like, what is an A plus hire? You can't hire a coach for $5 million a year, or something crazy like that. So you're going to have to pick somebody who's got some question marks. You're going to have to do the whole Jonah Hill, Paul DePodesta meme of what is his defect. Like, everybody's going to come with some defect. In this case with Neal Brown, it's he fizzled out a little bit at West Virginia, but again, he had a winning record. They, like you said, it's kind of hard to win there, especially right now,
Mhm.
in the current landscape of college football. I think they've been hurt by the lack of regional conference
Yeah.
alignment.
Yep.
In the Big East days, they were I think a lot more appealing job. But anyways, you get the point. Um, that's his blemish, and I can live with that. The only other coaching hire that I might have been more in on, but it sounds like wasn't really an option, was Tyson Helton, and
Yeah.
that would it from Western Kentucky, and that only would have been contingent on him bringing a good chunk of his players with him, bringing some of his redshirt freshman quarterback and some of those guys from Western Kentucky, and he had a hefty buyout, so you would have had to pay that buyout and pay him a nice salary, and then to give him a raise to make him want to leave, and then also you had to pay NIL to bring those guys in. Whereas Neal
Right.
Brown, you didn't. There was no buyout. He was an analyst. He was a seasonal employee, so to speak. So you didn't have a contract to buy out. So now you can redirect those funds to NIL or to his assistant coaches. So I think I was kind of teetering between Helton and Brown as far as like who I wanted between the two. And Brown, the more I thought about it, the more it made sense of just like having those funds that you don't have to waste on buying out Helton. So again, it sounds like Helton never actually interviewed, so that was a wash anyways. But again, I think B plus is about as good as you can hope for at North Texas with given what kind of salary you're working with. So um, it sounds like Skylar Cassidy is going to follow Morris to Oklahoma State.
Mhm.
So as far as staff retention, there's it seems like it's probably going to be a brand new staff. We'll see. Maybe somebody gets promoted offensive coordinator, but I think Neal Brown, being an offensive minded coach, being a former offensive coordinator, I think he's going to want to implement his system.
Yeah.
No disrespect to the number one offense in the country that is currently in Denton.
They did say a new era has begun. That was the exact phrasing used by the football team on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that Neal Brown is going to be given the full runway to bring in all his guys and implement his full system. And with that, you're going to lose guys, and that's okay. You're going to lose players, but for every player you lose, you get to bring another one in. So
Yeah.
that helps turn the roster over quicker in terms of like getting his guys in. But I'm hopeful that we can get some two deep guys to stay, maybe the ones who are not quite Oklahoma State material or Big 12 material.
Right.
Get some of those guys to stay, get some continuity, and kind of keep building off what you have, and then from there let Neal Brown bring in his guys. And he's obviously was recently the coach of West Virginia, so there's a ton of West Virginia kids that he has signed that are still playing college football. There's he's coming from Texas. You have to think that there are some Texas players who are going to be pushed out. I know that Texas didn't have the season that they wanted to, even though they're still campaigning to be in the playoffs without really the right, the resume to do that. But
we have a lot of T-shirt Texas fans probably as a secondary school, so I'll be nice to them tonight. But
yeah, sure, yeah. But yeah, I think my point is with Texas is that I could see Texas going really portal heavy this offseason and saying, look, we didn't have the season we thought we were going to. We had more holes than we thought we were going to have. Like we gotta spend some money in the portal and really turn this roster over. So I could see Texas, and that was even before this Neal Brown hire. Like just kind of listening to some podcasts, I think this could be a portal heavy offseason for the Longhorns, which means that they could jettison a bunch of guys, and I think Neal Brown could be in good position to scoop some of those guys up. So that could be opportunity there. But as far as building out the roster for next year, what are your kind of early impressions as far as like what you think the 2026 Mean Green football team is going to look like?
Well, I think it's a good thing that he has 2 games to scout his own team and see kind of what. I mean, obviously, a lot of these starters are probably going to be gone. I know we have a lot of seniors on defense, and a lot of the offensive guys are probably going to transfer. I'm not even going to talk about specific guys just because it's more than likely that we're going to lose pretty much everybody who we're really excited about for the most part. So it seems pointless to me to get really excited and hopeful about any specific guy staying, at least at this point. But like I said, I do think it's good that we'll have the Tulane game and then either hopefully not a bowl game, hopefully it's a playoff game, hopefully it's multiple playoff games. And hopefully it's a couple certain opponents in playoff games, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, no, I think it's definitely beneficial to have him on board now. I'm glad we got a coach this week. We kind of joked earlier, or I joked earlier today that I was like, you asked if we could podcast kind of as the pre-news was dropped. Like we knew Neal Brown was going to be the coach, but it hadn't been announced yet. And then you asked if we could pod, and I was like, yeah, but I really hope he gets announced today so we have like that to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
And the timing is really good. I think you mentioned that just a second ago, but yeah, like I think it's really, really good that we were able to get a coach in now. I am hopeful that it is, again, I really do feel for these kids that I hope they are not just completely flabbergasted by the amount of just off the field stuff they have to deal with at the moment. I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think the Temple game, which we'll talk about in a second, was evidence that this team is locked the F in and just ready to win. So it doesn't seem like it'll be something that'll mess with their heads too much. But for next year, I mean, I don't know how much of an expectation to set. Our schedule is very favorable to get kind of like we've mentioned it a couple times, get 7-8 wins as kind of like an expectation. Our home schedule's easy as all get out next year. I think the only certifiable L is to Indiana, and everything else is up in the air. But again, it depends if a certain running back decides to stay or not. It depends if how much of the successful offense that he ran kind of towards the end at West Virginia translates here. There's a lot up in the air, and I don't think there's a fair amount of expectations to set. I think with Neal, as far as like him personally, I just want to see him kind of do his culture thing. I'm going to say the culture word a lot, but that's what he is. If you listen to his introductory press conference at Troy or West Virginia, he mentions that a lot, where he's like, I'm big about culture, I'm big about vision, and he likes having personality on his team. He likes his teams kind of having that spark. And you and I mentioned we actually sat together at the game. It was kind of cute. We sat together at the Temple game, and we were watching all those kids do the shirtless thing, all taking all their shirts off and leaving it in the wing. It was cold. I mean, it was cold on I guess it was Friday.
Right.
And you kind of mentioned to me, you were like, I'm happy just to have anything that makes this school and this team kind of fun, because you just haven't really ever had that. And you look at all the things that we've had in the last 2-3 years under Morris. We got the Stone Cold celebration. We got, just guys being really amped up after the turnovers this year. And I mentioned it on the podcast a couple weeks ago, but just noticing how much guys are smiling and celebrating and being with each other after we score. It feels like a team, that culture that we've talked about all year, and how much this team seems to enjoy playing football. That's what Neal Brown does. That's his sweet spot. So I don't really have a win-loss expectation or a roster expectation. It's impossible to even get to roster right now because I don't know. But as far as the energy and the vibe of the team, I'm confident. I think kind of going back to what the B plus of the hire is. I think as far as personality and culture go, really, really, really good hire. As far as results, we'll see. Tom Fornelli likes to do a bit on Twitter where he says, "This is a great hire for X school. I have no idea if it'll work out."
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel about Neal Brown. It's like I don't think he's going to peter out and suck here, but both things are on the table where he could be a 10-win-a-year guy like he was at Troy, or he could kind of bump us back down to 5, 6, 7 wins a year. We don't know. So that's just my expectation and hope for next year. It's just I want to see tangible signs of what is this thing? Trust the climb. I want to see the climb in action. That's about it.
Yeah, no, I think that all sounds, realistic and reasonable for expectations. I think something that you mentioned there that is really good is he is going to get quite a bit amount of practices to evaluate the guys here.
Oh, practices too, yeah.
Yeah, so Eric Morris likes to tell this story about how whenever they hired Skylar Cassidy and he came in and he was watching Drew Mestamaker practice and he was like, where'd this guy come from? How'd you get him? Like, how'd you get this, 6'4", dude with a rocket arm, true freshman? And, obviously Morris got Cassidy up to speed on Mestamaker's story. But the point is, Cassidy did, that story is about Cassidy, the defense coordinator, looking at our quarterback who went on to be the conference player of the year. But during that time, obviously he was evaluating the defensive guys as well. He was seeing who would fit, what mold on his defense. And Neal Brown's going to have a chance to do that here. There are a lot of guys who he's going to get a chance to evaluate and see. And, likewise, they're going to guys who are going to meet Neal Brown early and get to say, hey, yeah, I kind of like this new coach. I'm interested in staying and seeing, at least staying through spring ball. And seeing, what it looks like. And then, there will inevitably, as there always is, whether there's a coaching change or not, you're going to have transfers who transfer in between the, the fall and the spring semesters, over the winter and that, January transfer portal window. You're going to have guys who transfer then, and you're going to have guys who transfer after the spring window and, or before the summer who transfer after, spring camp. So, I know back when Morris took the job, for example, we had Varkey's Gums, who had a really good year under Luttrell that last year, and then saying like he was going to stay with, stick it out with Morris, and then he transferred kind of during spring ball / after. Yeah. So there's going to be that. There's going to be guys who, look like they're staying, but then they don't. Braylon Charles and Brian Nelson transferred at the beginning of the year, before the season started too, early in the summer. So again, it's going to happen, but I think it is going to be good that, part of the appeal of him having that, analyst role is that you don't have to worry about him, staying to be an offensive coordinator through a Texas playoff run.
Right.
Or similarly, Oklahoma State.
Well, you say that.
I don't think I don't see it happening, but yeah, but again, he's an analyst, so I don't think that they're going to make him stay, even if they somehow weasel their way in to the college football playoff. He's going to get to be in Denton and see the practices and do all that. Whereas obviously, we know right now Eric Morris is not in Stillwater, and he's going to remain committed to the team through the conference championship and bowl college football playoff season. So
can I tag in here for 1 second?
Please.
Just on that note, I am. We last potted last Tuesday.
Yeah,
I think about the whole, and that was the day that Eric Morris got announced that he was going to Oklahoma State. Obviously, a lot has transpired, and I of course, since he's the coach of my favorite football team, I am kind of obliged to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I think in the moment we were all just a little bit kind of on edge, like it's best season ever, and now this we're
Mhm.
just everybody was just kind of like frustrated.
Right.
At least from the details that have come out from his mouth in press conferences about Oklahoma State. Um, he is the only coach after this little round of Alex Golesh going to Auburn, Silverfield to Arkansas, and Summerall to Tulane.
Mhm.
I know Summerall's coaching on Friday, but he's already been to Florida, kind of decked out in Florida gear, and just he seems like he's kind of ready to get out of there.
Yeah.
Morris, of all those guys, is the one guy who's kind of been like, no, we're going to finish this out, and this is my team until the end of the year. And he specifically pushed back his Oklahoma State introductory conference to next week so that he doesn't get in the way of the Tulane game. I think he's handled this really professionally. He kind of mentioned in his presser today that he really prides himself on his honesty and um, his ability just to be true to himself and true to himself with his players.
Yeah.
And again, some of it's probably been played up a little bit, but I really do commend him and respect him for how he's handled this. I think I'm definitely guilty of being a little bit frustrated at the timing of things, whether it was his fault or not. Uh, I think everybody was kind of on edge last week, and he really has kind of at least earned my goodwill back. Not that I ever lost it, but just kind of seeing how he's weathered the storm this week, especially seeing how well we played against Temple. Um, he looks unfazed, his team looks unfazed, and I think that's a testament to how good of a program he's built here and how good of a coach he is. Makes the sting hurt a lot less. So I wanted to take a second to say thank you to Eric Morris. He doesn't listen to this show, but if he ever did, it's just I appreciate the efforts that he's taken to really finishing this thing out strong and kind of using the last couple of days to appreciate the fan base, appreciate the community, that sort of stuff. So yeah, he's handled this really really well, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, and he was kind of getting choked up in the post game presser against Temple, kind of talking
Mm-hmm.
about looking out from his office and look, like I said, he wanted to be here,
Yeah,
and obviously the opportunity came along, and he couldn't pass it up. And if that's what happens, if that's what happens with Neal Brown, then great, we're continuing to be
yep,
a premier G5 team because look, they both want to be here. So did Ross Hodge. So did Grant McCaslin.
yep,
But at the end of the day, we just we can't pay coaches as much money as these other schools, and that's
right,
perfectly fine. But no one would argue that those guys it was a bad outcome for any of their tenures here. The fact that because it ended with them taking a different job.
sure,
So obviously you always prefer that. North Texas has for unfortunately long been a coaching graveyard. Has been a place where coaches get fired and for the most part don't get another chance to be a Division One FBS level head coach. So it's better obviously to have this kind of outcome than to have the outcome of getting fired. So um,
yeah,
all that being said, yeah, I think like you said, glad to have Morris here through through the run, and it does, like you said, with the Temple win, it did feel like the focus is still there. The focus is on the season. Oklahoma State was 1-11. They can wait. They're not. Um, there there's a lot of work there to be done, and there's nothing pressing there. Like they're not playing football right now. They're in off season mode. So
yep,
yeah, Morris, feeling pretty good about the championship game. He's going to have his presser next week, his introductory press conference at Oklahoma State after the conference championship game, which John Summerall just had his today, I think. So
right,
that feels advantageous on a short week as far as preparation and getting ready for the game. But um, you know, we'll we'll see when the ball gets kicked off. But you know,
yeah.
yeah, going.
We've
Sorry, go
had
ahead.
games. I was just gonna say we've had games like this before where we're like, I mean, I don't want to say kick our feet up as North Texas fans, but we've had games in the last couple of years where it's like, yes, like The moment has
Oh,
come.
for
We
sure.
got this in the bag, and then just everything turns to poop.
Yeah.
So, uh, I I messaged earlier that I've got I got to work at the ticket on Friday night. I'm gonna take a bottle of sparkling cider, grape juice, whatever it's called, the non-alcoholic champagne. I have a bottle of it in my fridge, ready to go if we win on Friday. And
Oh, yeah.
I very confidently just said, "I'm taking it to the studio Friday. It's going up there with me."
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Oh, wait." So
No,
yeah,
you
well,
gotta go in. No toe
it's
dipping.
it's coming. No, it's coming with me. I got to work Friday night, so it's coming with me either way.
Yeah. No, although I will say to your point, but we have a soccer game, a youth soccer game that night, so I won't be, you know, at a venue or whatever, watch party, anything like that. But I told my wife, I was like, I don't want to be around anybody during that game. Like, if things are going south, or whether they're up and it's a roller coaster, I don't think I want to be around other people. I kind of want to just be, watching the game at my house, and
It's the biggest game ever, man. We've had like 8 of those this year, but it really is the biggest game we've ever played. So
yeah. I mean, you can't argue it. The idea of a conference championship game is relatively new in the history of college football. I think the Big 12 and SEC and MAC started doing it in the 90s, and then throughout the 2000s, every other conference started kind of following that model. But North Texas, this is the third conference championship game in school history. Obviously, the other two were in Conference USA, and before that, they were never in a conference that held a conference championship game. So
yeah.
to play a win the conference type of game is definitely a unique and rare opportunity. Nevertheless, one where both teams are ranked, which is
Hmm.
even more rare in the history of North Texas sports. I think Kyle Yeomans was saying that the last time UNT played in a ranked versus ranked football game, it was 1977 against Florida State. But North Texas and Florida State were actually not ranked. They were ranked in the opposite polls. Like, I think North Texas was ranked in the coaches poll and Florida State was ranked in the AP, something like
Hmm.
that. So they weren't. Both teams were not ranked in the same poll. Whereas obviously with Tulane, North Texas and Tulane are ranked in all three polls right now. So um, yeah, with
Where
that,
did
we can kind of mention.
I didn't see tonight. I know we got ranked in the playoff rankings. Where's are we behind two? We're one spot ahead of JMU. Is Tulane ahead of us?
Yeah, I think Tulane is 20, North Texas 24, and JMU is 25. So
Okay.
there is no mystery. It is win, and you are in the college football playoff. So
Yep.
that is the other aspect. Real quick, you did want to touch on the Temple game. Like Carter said, we got to sit next to each other. It was a fun experience.
Great experience.
But yeah, I mean, it was we talked about this pre-show. The Temple game was just everything that we've come to expect. Drew Mestamaker was nearly perfect, threw 4 incompletions against 3 touchdowns. So, when you have about as many passing touchdowns as incompletions, it's going pretty well.
He did the lazy, so overrated quarterback did throw a pick that got bailed out by a softish pass interference call.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, I
So
remember.
I really need Drew to lock in. I'm not
Yeah,
not too impressed with that. No, I'm just kidding.
no, yeah, you can't let that one slide. We can only give him so much praise before we
Yeah,
gotta
that's right.
knock him down a peg. But
That's right.
yeah, he finished 20 of 24, 366 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Quarterback rating of 252, which is back-to-back games now where he's had quarterback ratings over 250. So he's kind of playing on another level right now. The
Yep.
last 5 games, I think he's averaging over 390 yards, and wins conference player of the year. And then obviously Caleb Hawkins, 1B, goes and rushes for another 4 touchdowns. It feels like when those two guys are on the field, there is no winning if you're the defense. You just have to
Yep.
you just have to hold on and hope that
Yep.
you can make a play, and then hope you can get maybe one of the few errors that they make. Uh, in this game, Hawkins did fumble, I think, for the first time all year, which Temple was able to convert to a touchdown. But again, I mean, they are the dynamic duo of college football right now. I mean, Caleb Hawkins leading the nation in rushing touchdowns, Drew Messmaker leading the nation in passing yards. So I mean, these are quite literally,
Yep.
the top backfield in all of college football.
Well,
Obviously, the big dogs would claim that their guys are better, even if their stats aren't quite as good. But regardless, these guys are humming at a pace that is really unmatched. So going into, is there anything else you want to touch on? I know, like I said, that there were a couple fumbles that led to touchdowns, but otherwise it was pretty much domination on both sides of the football.
I have three takeaways really from the game. Number one, we need some defensive linemen back.
Yeah.
Pretty badly. I think I listened to Morris's presser on the way to work. If I recall correctly, I think he said that Armstead went down with an injury in the game. I think he said they're working with him to play on Friday.
Yeah.
I think he said that we're getting Hayes and Clements back, but I
didn't hear him say names, but I think he said that they're feeling pretty good about getting line guys back.
Somebody, it may have been Miles, I don't remember. Somebody asked him about the health of guys going into Friday, and he was like, "Yeah, we're excited to get some guys back." I don't remember what he said, but
yeah, he made it sound like they're thinking that the D-line guys who have been out are going to play.
Yes,
or at least some of them.
We really need them on Friday and going forward into the playoff. Those are a couple players that we need back. So that was my first takeaway. I think we probably could have been a little bit more shut down with them running the ball. They did run the ball rather successfully, which has been an issue kind of throughout the year. But again, we've been banged up on defense, and like we've talked about all year, they make turnovers, and they had made turnovers on Saturday or Friday. So you can give up 250 rushing yards if you create a couple turnovers. So that was my first takeaway. Second takeaway was, again, just very happy with the poise and prosperity of the team. I think everything looked good. Everything looked normal. And you talk about Drew playing back-to-back, great QBR games. He really just does, as the weeks go on, look more and more comfortable. I think the first couple of weeks this year, he had a couple. I mean, he obviously had great games, but I think we were looking at a couple like big highlight passes from him and being like, "Whoa, like who is this kid?" And not that he was a highlight player, but just there were, that was the standout, was like there were a couple passes against like Western Michigan where we were like, "Holy cow, this kid can really throw the ball." And remember, we weren't totally sure about how well he was going to be able to run at the beginning of the year. He's been better at running the ball when he's needed to. He just looks better every week. So kind of like you talked about, just having the 17 and 24 combo out there. I don't know if any of our listeners are Stars fans, but I remember watching the playoffs last year, and when we got Mikko Rantanen in that trade, the season from then on was really into the playoffs. It was like, okay, well, we're going to win tonight because we have Mikko Rantanen and you don't. Like, we have this guy out here he's just going to beat you. And it's an immense privilege to have those two back there, and that's how I feel about the game Friday, which we'll get into in a second. So that's my second takeaway. My third takeaway is that your family is the absolute loveliest group of people I have met. I had a great time sitting at the game with you. Your wife is lovely. Your kid's lovely. Just lovely family. You got a nice family, Billy.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it was a good time. It was a good group of people. And hey,
wait, hang on. I have one more. Sorry to interrupt you. I have one more takeaway. Certain people, who I will not name, decided to, I don't know the right word to use. They posted a video of the crowd. Certain people did this.
Yeah.
Decided to post a video of the crowd. It was either at halftime or before the game.
I think it was early, like maybe right at kickoff or
at least 5,000 to 7,000 people not in their seats yet. I just want to say, I think that was really nasty work. It was actually a really good crowd, I think.
Yeah.
I think the Morris News probably kept some seats out of butts, and the fact that it was right post Thanksgiving and we're playing a 5-6 team, and
it was the student side too.
And the students were awesome. Like we talked about, the T-shirt guys.
No, they were, but I'm saying like the picture was of the students, was the student side. It wasn't the alumni side.
Yeah, no, he only showed this. It could have been she, whoever it was. They only posted a video scanning the student side, which ended up being really, really packed.
It did, yeah.
To the point where when they all ran off to go take their shirts off in the wing and be silly with each other, they were still really full.
Yeah, I know.
And I pointed out to you, I was like, where do those people come from? Because the student section did not empty out. So yeah, certain people were, for some reason, trying to make the impression that we did not have a good crowd. I think all circumstances included, we had a really great crowd on Friday, and it was cold. We were playing a bad team, and everybody's not looking ahead, but I think everybody's really excited about this Friday and what lies after. So I'm very, very happy with the fan base for showing up and being loud. We were loud on third downs and into the game. It was a good crowd. I thought it was a good crowd.
Yeah.
That's my takeaway. Okay, 4 takeaways, and I'm done. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it was a good crowd, and it was a good game to take, a casual football fan or whoever to come, witness North Texas football.
Yeah.
This was the team to do it, and glad that we could get one more in there where people could witness the offense and this team that has really put together just an amazing season. So, going into the conference championship game, you've got Tulane playing in New Orleans on their field because of the tiebreaker rules, where I guess the college football playoff ranking was the deciding tiebreaker as far as who got to host and got to play in it. Navy also finished 7-1 in conference, but because we beat them, they were left out, I believe. And all three teams, North Texas, Navy, and Tulane, all currently ranked in the AP and the coaches poll. So again, a really good year for the American Conference, and
Yep.
some top, so multiple ranked teams. That's definitely something that we're not used to, having a conference where you've got more than one ranked team in it. But again, speaking to the way that the North Texas program and the perception and all of that has risen. You're playing in a game on ABC, 3-letter network with two ranked teams playing, and you're one of them. And going into this game, obviously, their coach Summerall took the Florida job. Morris is headed to Oklahoma State. So it's there's a lot of interesting aspects at play. I think as far as on the field, I think where you kind of start with this is basically the best offense in the conference going against the best defense in the conference.
Yep.
Tulane has only allowed 273 points on the year. That's the only teams who've allowed less than them were Memphis and Army. Obviously, Army plays a different style, and Tulane played a harder schedule than anyone else. They had to play multiple. They played 3 P4 teams this year. They played Northwestern, who they beat. They played Duke, who they beat, who was in the ACC championship game, and then they lost to Ole Miss. So a battle-tested Tulane team that went 7-1 in conference, and I think this is their fourth straight conference championship game. They won the conference in 2022. They lost conference championship game in 23 and 24 to SMU and Army respectively. So they are no stranger to the American Conference Championship game. So what are your thoughts going into this game as far as the team that we're playing, and maybe a little bit of the personnel, and then just kind of what you're looking at specifically with this game?
Well, I can't make the trip, but I'm happy that a lot of our friends and uh, buddies are going to be able to get down to New Orleans for a fun game. That's always nice. I don't really know how to truly gauge Tulane. I do think they are definitely battle tested, like you said. Um, the reason I've kind of had no issue with them being ranked ahead of us all year is they have 2 P4 wins. Even if they're not great P4 wins, say what you want about Duke, they are in a championship game, whether they deserve to be there or not. They are in it.
Yeah.
They lost pretty bad to what, at least at the time, was one of the best teams in the country. I don't know what to make of Ole Miss now without their coach. And then they got destroyed by a team that we destroyed. So,
yeah.
But then you look at the rest of their resume; they've taken care of business. You can probably chalk the UTSA loss just as maybe just the blip on the radar. I don't really know. I think Jake Retzlaff is a good quarterback. But I when we were sitting together on Friday against, I can't remember Temple's QB's name, but I was like, he really only has 1 pick all year. And then three plays later, Armstead picked him off.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this defense has done a great job of reading kind of some high level talented quarterbacks this year. As far as Tulane's defense goes, I don't know that there's enough there to stifle this team. I think if you're talking about the game following the script, as they say,
Mhm.
it's probably most likely that North Texas ends with around 30 to 35 points instead of 56, 59,
Right.
um, which I think would still be considered enough to win this game, hopefully. Um, but I think the tempo of the game is going to be a lot different than what we've seen the last couple of months. You got to remember we're coming off 3 straight, blowout games against Rice, Temple, and Charlotte. Navy, and then you go back before Navy, we had UTSA, which that game was pretty much over by midway through the third quarter. So the Navy game was the only real game that we've had to, pace ourselves and have a tempo and a script and kind of,
Yeah.
compete in real time, not to, for lack of a better phrase, I guess. So that does worry me a little bit. Morris has talked all week about getting back on the Friday schedule. They like that they have a week of time off in between Temple and Tulane. They're kind of back on like the normal every 7 games schedule.
Yeah.
I hope that is a real tangible thing that helps them, but I don't know how much that really plays into it. I think as far as the tempo of the game and the nature of the game is it's a little alarming considering that we haven't really had that in a month, but it's kind of the same thing for Temple, where sorry, not Temple, Tulane, where I know their scores aren't as disparity driven as ours are, but they did play Charlotte, Temple, and Florida Atlantic the last 3 games. They blanked Charlotte. I think they went up early in that game and never really. I think they just took their foot off the gas pedal, and it didn't even matter because Charlotte's that bad.
Right.
They beat Temple by 24, and they handled Florida Atlantic. So I think that I think if you're asking me, gun to my head, who's the better team, I think North Texas is the fair and honest answer there. I think we unequivocally have the better offense. I do think Tulane probably has a better defense top to bottom. They've kept teams really low scoring this year for most of the season. But again, kind of like I said, North Texas is a defense where it's like they're not afraid to give up 20 to 25 points because they know that they're going to get 2-3 turnovers every game. And we've done enough to throw teams off their rhythm that I think our defense maybe doesn't have to be as good as Tulane's, but we've got enough to keep us in this game. And then you go back to the offense. I don't think there's anything close on their offensive side of the ball. I think our offensive line's better. I think our quarterback's better. I think our receivers are better, and I think our running backs are better. So I'm confident. Like I said, I've got the sparkly champagne ready to go. But if I have a concern Friday, even though Tulane's kind of in the same boat, I don't like that we haven't really played a competitive game in a month. Having said that, if you want to kind of dissect each game in itself, we did trail Temple early on. We trailed 7-0. We trailed Rice 14-0, and both those games we ended up winning by 35 points. So I wouldn't call it a worry, but it is something that I'm going to keep an eye on. I just want to see how we play when the lights are on again, because kind of we're going back to the USF game. Maybe the lights were too bright in that moment. And they handled their business against Navy, who has turned out to be a really good team. I think we kind of talked about Navy around that time as being maybe not that guy, but they've had a couple good games since then, and I think you could squarely call Navy the 3rd or 4th best team in this conference, and be honest in saying that. So I just want to see good tempo, good discipline. I don't know, just. The lights are on again, and let's see what we do.
Yeah, for sure. And we got all conference football teams out today, first, second, and third team. Tulane have basically most of their defense was either first, second, or third team all conference. So they've got guys all throughout, all 3 levels of their defense who have been recognized with postseason accolades. And then North Texas, on the flip side, all 5 offensive linemen were first, second, third team. We had
Yep.
Gabe Blair first team, Braden Nelson and Jim Tobadego, our tackles, were both second team, and then Tayanta and Johnny Dixon, our center and right guard, were third team all conference. So this is really going to be a matchup of the top offensive players in the conference against top defense players. Tulane, I was mentioning their scoring defense. They have given up the least points in conference games. They only gave up 167 points throughout 8 conference games. So a little over 20 points a game there. Like you said, I think you're kind of looking at North Texas scoring. If North Texas can get into the upper 30s, I think you feel really good about their chances.
Yep.
As far as Tulane's offense, they are obviously led by, like Carter said, Jake Retzloff. He
Known
was
sex haver, might I add?
yes in the famous city of Provo for sex havers. He Provo, Utah. Yeah, so he was BYU's quarterback last year. Has a court case of where consensual premarital relations are revealed, which gets him expelled from the university and ends up at Tulane. He has been a good quarterback for them. Obviously, 14 rushing touchdowns, 561 rushing yards. Not as great passing stats. I think that's where you can kind of, if you can make him beat you with his arm, I think you're better off there. That's my biggest concern with North Texas is we've we've long struggled with the running quarterback, and we've
Yes,
long
sir.
struggled with the quarterback who either kills us on design runs or kills us on the scrambles. But regardless, we're just like wondering why our spy can't hang with him or whatever. So
Yep.
that's gonna be a big part of this game is can you contain Retzlaff, and if he picks up a 10-yard rush here and there, that's one thing. But I think, what I was talking to you about with Temple last week is that they have they have decent offensive players, but they didn't have the explosive plays. And with Tulane, it's kind of similar where they don't have the most explosive offense. I mean, Retzlaff leads the team in rushing with 561 rushing yards, and
Yep.
their leading receiver only has 582 receiving yards. Like they're not filled with Wyatt Youngs and Caleb Hawkins and Cameron Dorners on their side of the ball offensively. So you have to be able to just kind of don't let those guys rip off big plays on you. There shouldn't be any of that. Can your defense contain them and just again if they're getting big chunk plays, then I think you're in trouble because that's not what they're built to do. And if they're doing that on you, then that's a little bit of an advantage that you don't necessarily have them just that you don't just give them right off the bat that is going to happen. Whereas North Texas, we're going to get big plays. That's part of the equation. But if they start getting that, then I think that's where it becomes a little more concerning because you don't necessarily, that's not a given. Again, defensively, like they're gonna force turnovers, and if you can protect the football and not let them have a short field, I think you make their offense drive the length of the field. You make them, have these long sustained drives, and hopefully you do your classic bend but don't break strategy. I think as long as those things that's how the game plays out, I think you feel pretty good about your chances in this one.
Yeah.
Like you said, Mestemaker, he's getting better every game, and it's a shame that we probably won't have him beyond this year. But the version of Drew Mestemaker that we have right now is good enough to win Conference Player of the Year. He's good enough to win you this game, and that's all I'm concerned about right now. And I'm excited to see how he looks in this one with this opportunity that he has absolutely earned. Is there
Yeah.
anything else kind of that you're looking at with this matchup, keeping an eye on here?
I like using that word earned. I couldn't agree more. I think they have earned the chance to get another game in the spotlight. I know Navy was a big game. I'm not taking that away from them, but this is the biggest game they've played since USF, and this is the chance to prove you're legit. I don't think, like I said, I don't think, as far as I'm concerned, there's too much of a worry about the lights being too bright again. I think Tulane is good, but I don't think they're good enough to completely shut us down. I think some of the worry in like these big moments for North Texas that we've had in recent years is, you can go back to like the FAU games with Kiffin with Kiffin when he was there, or UTSA a couple of years ago with Luttrell, whatever it was. Any of these big games, like the teams we were playing, always had something to stifle us, and they always had. If it was like a one key quarterback, Harris at UTSA or whoever, there was always something where it was like we just can't beat this guy.
They just had a trump card.
Yep, exactly. And I don't think that Tulane has that. I could be wrong. And, maybe we're sitting here in a week and talking about how Jake Retzlaff had 250 rush yards against us, and that was the difference maker. It's totally possible. But at least to the naked eye, I've watched enough Tulane ball this year to think, yeah, this team's good. I definitely think they're close to us in terms of top to bottom how good a football team is, but I think we're better. I just think, again, kind of like I said with the Miko Rantanen point, we have Drew Mestemaker and Caleb Hawkins, and you do not.
Right.
And until I see reason for that to not be enough to win a football game, that's going to be my MO. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think there's any reason to doubt these guys. I know that we haven't played the best schedule. I know we didn't play Memphis this year. I know we didn't play. I guess we played USF and Navy, but
we didn't play Tulane.
we didn't play. Yeah. We didn't play Tulane in the regular season. Thank you. And our non-conference wasn't great, but we beat a decent enough Wazoo team that hung with Ole Miss and James Madison. So.
And a Western Michigan team that's playing for a conference championship.
And a decent Western Michigan team. Yeah, so this is kind of what I've said all year when I'm trying to talk up North Texas to my family and friends is like, well, we don't have the best resume, but for North Texas, it's a pretty good resume.
Yeah.
It's as good a resume as you need right now just to get into the playoff because we're in the American Conference and the American Conference is pretty good. So, I know our resume wasn't elite this year, and I know Tulane probably has a little bit more to hang their hat on right now, but there's not a lot of nerves. I think there's actually, if you ever seen that clip of it's the high school kids, I can't remember where they were doing it, but it's those kids that were they're all jacked up talking about their playoff game, and he's like, I got my swagger back.
Oh yeah, there's in Minnesota, I think.
Yeah, there's a old man in that clip who says, if you're not nervous, you're not ready. So I guess in that sense, I am a little nervous, but it's good nerves. I don't have that kind of lingering doomer feeling. I think kind of like you and me were Rangers fans when we won the World Series. It was like, okay, the stench is gone. That stench of this team is always going to let me down, and it's the same old blank. It's the same old result. It's always losing in the same way or losing in new ways the same way.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like that's the case anymore with this team. It feels like the doomerism of North Texas is gone. And really, we've had 2 bad quarters of football all season long. I don't suspect that we're going to have 3 more on Friday that are going to keep us out of the college football playoff. So you want to get into score predictions or do we have anything else to touch base on?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we can go into score predictions. As I go into my score, I think I'll kind of echo the same point. Back whenever we played Western Michigan, we were down. I think we were down 10 points in the second half going in that game in the third quarter, and I was sitting next to Adam of Mean Green Nation. He made the trip there as well, and I was just basically saying I feel I feel okay because we've got Drew Messmaker and they don't they didn't have a great passing attack. I knew that, we had the horses to come back in that game, and we had the guy who, in going into overtime, I felt really good. It was like, we have Drew Messemaker and they don't. Obviously 25 yards. That's that can play into the favor of a strong rushing attack like they had, but it felt like we had the guy taking the snaps who was just the difference maker on the whole field, and. That wasn't one of his best games this year at all. But again, just having the player of that talent and that caliber, and the Dirk effect of Dirk put up points, but beyond that, he just had so much gravity where the defense had to focus on him so much that it just made the rest of your offense better. Mestemaker has that kind of gravity on the field where whether he's handing the ball off or what the defense has to scheme for him in such a way that it just elevates the whole team. So
it's the Luka effect. It's having a guy that's so good that he elevates everybody around him.
Yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, with that being said, Tulane obviously a really good team. They've they've uh, they've earned their ranking this year. They've
Yep.
looked good in the eyes of pollsters, and uh, with that again, I think we have Drew Messamaker and they don't, and I think that's going to be the difference.
Yep.
Just over 4 quarters of football, he might make a mistake here and there. The team might get a little bit shell shocked at some points throughout the game, but they are a bunch that just keep hammering away at you. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with a score of 38-34 North Texas heading to the CFP.
I went back a couple weeks ago and looked at our score predictions, and they're all over the place. They're way more random than I thought they would have been. So I feel that we've lost the plot a little bit in terms of trying to get this right. I think yours was pretty good, but mine were all sorts of a mess. I've
You
consistently
did
picked
nail the ones where we didn't podcast.
that is a good point. We did. Let's not let that happen again. I like doing these. um, I think at this point I'm throwing out the rule book. I'm saying, you know what? All I care about is picking what's in my gut. And in my gut, I feel we're gonna win this game. I don't think it's gonna be a blowout, but I really do feel like this is a game where we're going to maybe it's gonna be a close first half, and I don't think it's ever gonna get like so out of reach. But I do think that they'll kind of I think the game script kind of lets us start to soak it in maybe around like 8 minutes left in the fourth, where we're maybe up by like 17, 20 points, and we get the ball, and it's like, oh, wow, this is happening. I think there's going to be a tangible moment of like, wow, we're really about to win this game. I don't think it has enough of a linear comparison to go down to the wire. I've seen you and a lot of people are picking this to be a one-score game, and I get that. But I don't think that I don't think this game is just going to come down to like one possession. I don't. I feel like this is a game we're going to be able to pull away from. It'll be late, and I think again I really do respect Tulane. I think they're a good team. I just don't think they're as good as us. And
Yeah.
I'm going to go with a 45-24 win over Tulane. It'll get spread out late. I don't think it's going to be a blowout early, but I'm going 45-21.
All right.
Did I say 45-21 or 45-24? I'll say 45-21.
Yeah. Okay.
3 touchdowns.
Nice. All right. And with that, thank you for listening to this one. I know there's a lot of material to cover, so if you're still listening, Thank you for sticking through. And we're gonna have more in the coming weeks. With Neal Brown stuff, with hopefully a college football playoff game to preview. Plenty of December news coming your way here on the show. So hope you stick around for that as well. And again, thank you for listening. Go Mean Green.
Any potential advertisers, we're going to be busy. Get on us.